This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ex-diplomat Fumio Kishida set to become Japan's next prime minister after narrow win in ruling party leadership race. Nigeria police deny being responsible for killings during procession by members of a banned Shiite Muslim group in Abuja. And we tell you about a choir in Egypt that's soaring beyond social and gender barriers. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up over the next hour, we look at what the African continent has to offer from its rich repertoire of heritage attractions. And in sports, Cameroon legend Samuel Eto'o edges closer in his quest to become the country's Football Association president. Welcome to Africa Live. We begin in Japan, where after a close party leadership race, former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida is set to become the country's next prime minister. Fumio Kishida has long been eyeing Japan's top political office. Let's now take a look at the 64-year-old former foreign minister's credentials. Kishida is from a Hiroshima family of politicians and entered politics in 1993 after working as a banker. He previously served as LDP policy chief and was foreign minister between the years of 2012 to 2017. During his term, he negotiated accords with Russia and South Korea, with whom Japan's relations are traditionally tense. He has famously called abolishing nuclear weapons his life's work, and in 2016 helped bring then US President Barack Obama to Hiroshima on a historic visit. Kishida has earned a reputation of seeking the middle ground, and observers say he leads the liberal faction of the ruling party. Despite this reputation, he has been less direct on social hot-button issues like gay marriage. The father of three has touted his listening skills and says Japan's public wants a politics of generosity. Kishida's previously lost the LDP leadership in 2020 to Yoshihide Suga. He is also known for his love of baseball and having drinks, both widely popular in Japan. Well, joining me now from London is Sami Hamdi to discuss this further. He is the managing director of the International Interest, a global risk and intelligence company. Sami, what are your thoughts about the incoming Japanese leader, Fumio Kishida?
I think it's important to put these elections into context. I think it's important to remember that when Suga, his predecessor, came to power, he came to power on the basis that the Japanese were expecting a better handling of the coronavirus pandemic, a better handling of the economy, a better handling of the politics in Japan. And Shinzo Abe, when he claimed that he was stepping down because he was ill, he was stepping down because he was very unpopular and the Japanese were unhappy with his policies. But Suga, who originally had a reputation for being decisive, proved to be very indecisive. He would suggest there would be a lockdown and then not do the lockdown. He would suggest there would be emergency powers and then not do emergency powers, which made businesses incapable of being able to adapt to the various different circumstances. And this is why, as a result of that uncertainty, as the result of the lack of decisiveness, we've seen that in 1 year, Suga has decided to step down. In Kishida's appointment, what we see from the party is a desire for continuity. We see a desire not to make any radical changes. We see a desire essentially to maintain the status quo, to continue as things are, to essentially ensure that whatever happens, there are no radical changes. And this is why Kishida, who was a foreign minister under Shinzo Abe's government, who essentially shares many of the similar views with regards to China, with regards to the policy of the economy, with regards to how Japan should be run. Kishida is the safe choice for the party, as opposed to some of the more maverick alternatives that the LDP could have chosen in order to really present itself as a party that is changing in the midst of a changing society. And it shows that the party wants to ensure that, or it still believes in its blueprint for winning elections that doesn't appear much different from its predecessors.
And Sami, touching on his former engagement as foreign minister, how then is Kishida's win likely to impact Japan's foreign policy engagement?
I think we are going to see more of the same. We saw in the United Nations the meeting of the Quad, Japan, Australia, the US and India participating together. While China was not mentioned by name, it's clear who the target of this Quad is. We're seeing Japan now increasingly concerned by China. We're seeing that Japan now is seeking greater militarization and greater perhaps independence of its foreign policy in order to be able to pursue its ability to deal with China, not necessarily in an adversarial manner, but rather in a way of which they seek to communicate with China, to find some sort of established relationship with China and to establish some sort of deterrent in the event, of course, they believe that China seeks to flex its muscle. So I think we're seeing more of the same. I don't think Kishida represents any break. I don't think he represents any change in the foreign policy that we've seen so far in Japan. It's a continuation of Shinzo Abe and more a changing of the face in order to counter increasingly domestic unpopularity that is rising. And with elections due in November 28th, the reality is that they will be very keen to ensure that they maintain their power as opposed to losing it as a result of their inability or stubbornness with regards to trying to bring about change.
And finally, Sami, looking ahead, what should we expect then from trade relations between Japan and African countries to be like under Kishida's leadership?
I think Japan is very much involved in Africa in providing necessary loans, in providing financial facilities through which to help build institutional infrastructures. But I think that the reality is that Japan continues to suffer the same problems that it traditionally has over the past decade, which is an inability really to fully understand the different cultures, an inability to really understand how business practices take place, an inability to really trust what is taking place on the ground. They are less pragmatic, less shrewd perhaps than the Chinese are in operating in Africa. I think that Kishida won't necessarily change much. I do think that there are a number of institutions such as JICA, such as other institutions that are dedicated towards trying to promote trade with Africa, trying to promote development in Africa. Japan is very generous in the financial loans that it gives in order to build infrastructure. I think Japan is very much interested in taking advantage of the opportunities that Africa presents, but I think it remains hamstrung by its own limitations with regards to its lack of knowledge of the terrain and its inability to date to find any real resolution to that. But I do think that is changing slightly. I do think that is improving. But the direct answer to your question is we are going to see more of the same, perhaps even increased engagement and a desire to get Japan further involved in the opportunities that Africa presents.
Sami, thank you very much for speaking to us on Africa Live. Managing Director of the International Interest, Sami Hamdi, speaking to us live there from London. Well, earlier we spoke to Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies. He also shared his thoughts on Fumio Kishida's election victory and the challenges that lie ahead for him.
The Japanese politics, particularly the LDP politics, is all about factions. It's about the seats, about the deal, about the way how I think the different factions for the same reason to claim to power, that on what kind of sort of ground they were able to strike a deal. And besides, of course, Kishida is widely regarded as had a strong capability in reaching, building consensus, and also in terms of his leadership style. He's not as popular as Kono, but he is acceptable in terms of his sort of a steady and stable style. Now, the challenges Kishida facing is how he can do that. What will be the political sort of capital, but more importantly, where is still motivation? So I think economically, I would not expect that he would have a big shot or a good answer. We'll just wait and see what he will be able to do in the coming days when he comes to really officially takes over the prime ministership.
In Nigeria, a procession by members of a banned Shiite Muslim group in Abuja has been rocked by gunfire. The Islamic movement in Nigeria members were taking part in a procession to mark the religious ritual of Arba'in. Eyewitnesses say around 10 people were killed. but Nigerian police have denied firing bullets at the crowd. Around 50 members from the Islamic movement have been arrested. The group was banned by the government in 2019 after protests against the detention of its leader.
We are finished. People were dispersing while the police and soldiers arrived. They started shooting tear gas, then later on they used live ammunition on us, majorly female and children, because most of the male have even left because they have already conducted the prayer for us to disperse. So this is what happens today. They just attack on armed innocent female and children. They have killed about 8 people now. So many people have run into the bush with so many gunshot injuries.
Well, let's go a bit deeper into this story. For the very latest, CGTN's Tesem Akende is live from Jos with more. Tesem, police in Nigeria have been denying killing Shiites during that procession in Abuja. What more can you tell us about this and what exactly happened?
Well, it was an annual spectacle, the Arba'in Trek, which is very symbolic for members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, which is a Shiite sect. We have different Shiite sects, but this is very important for the members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, which is just one of such sects. We have other sects like the Alpha Clean, we have the Al-Hura Uzam, but what happened yesterday was strictly by members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria who are just a Shiite sect as well. They were celebrating the Arba'in, they were carrying out the Arba'in Trek, which is an annual spectacle which is very symbolic to them in commemoration of the death of Imam Hussein, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. This is very dear to them and they hold it every year. The police has denied killing members of the movement, but just a while ago I spoke with Ibrahim Musa, who is president of the media forum of the IMN in Nigeria here, which he confirmed to me that 2 of them, there are figures about 8 people, but he told me categorically that he knows about 2 people who were killed yesterday, about 16 injured and are receiving medical attention at the moment. These were words I got reliably from, categorically from Ibrahim Musa, who is the president of the media forum of the movement here in Nigeria. So this was what happened yesterday. They were around the Gwarimpa area in Abuja, the nation's capital. He told me that they were very peaceful, and as far as they are concerned, the attacks came on them. And I also asked him about their conduct. He said they were very peaceful. So this was what happened yesterday, basically.
And Tesem, this group, the Islamic movement in Nigeria, does, as it stands, remained illegal. What prompts its members then to continue participating in these processions in Abuja?
Yeah, these are questions we've always engaged as media people. We've engaged members of the movement because the government, the supremacy of the government is key. And if the government is saying you are banned, you are outlawed, we've asked them why they go ahead to do this. And they cite different sections of the Constitution telling us they have the right to freedom of association, they have the right to freedom of religion as well. So these are indices, these are parameters they stand on. And above all, they tell us that they are peaceful. It's a claim that has always been denounced by the government. It all started in Kaduna State in the northwest of the country, where the governor of the state, Nasir El-Rufai, said the Islamic movement in Nigeria, members of the Shiite sect, of this Shiite sect, are not good news to Nigeria. He categorically said they are an insurgency. He didn't mince words at all. So he went really hard on the movement in Kaduna State, and in Zaria, which has been their headquarters in Nigeria. After that, the central government also took the same vein and proscribed the movement in Nigeria. But as far as the movement is concerned, they have been outlawed, they have been proscribed, but they say they will continue to associate and they will continue to carry out their religious inclinations because as far as they are concerned, they are peaceful, and they also cite the fact that the Constitution provides for them to relate and carry out, belong to any religious group as far as they are concerned. So these are the grounds and parameters upon which they stand, and they've been carrying out their activities, though outlawed.
All right. Thank you very much for your updates there. CGTN's Tessem Akende speaking to us live there from Jos, Nigeria. Well, it's time for us to take a quick break. Still ahead on the program. We update you on the appearance of the U.S. military's top brass before Congress over the chaotic exit from Afghanistan. And we tell you about a choir in Egypt that's soaring beyond social and gender barriers.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Now to the U.S. Congress and the chaotic and messy exit from Afghanistan. The military's top brass faced tough questions almost a month after the troops' withdrawal. Caroline Malone has more now from Washington.
Well, the military chiefs answered some tough questions from lawmakers on Tuesday, in particular about what kind of intelligence they'd seen about the Taliban taking over as quickly as it did. The Secretary of Defense, General Austin, said they were actually surprised at how the Afghan army and its partners had left their posts so quickly, which had allowed the Taliban to move in more easily, and that they hadn't appreciated the depths of corruption and poor leadership, or that the Afghan president would flee the country as he did in mid-August. All the military chiefs did agree that the knowledge that US troops were withdrawing would have impacted the morale of the Afghan security forces, who were actually used to having their US and NATO allies around. The generals had said that they'd advised President Biden earlier in the year to keep some troops, which contradicts what Biden had said, that no one had in fact warned him. Well, General McKenzie, head of US Central Command, spoke in detail about his views on keeping the US troops.
Senator, again, I won't share my personal recommendation to the president, but I will give you my honest opinion, and my honest opinion and view shaped my recommendation. I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, and I also recommended earlier in the fall of 2020 that we maintain 4,500 at that time. Those are my personal views. I also have a view that the withdrawal of those forces would lead inevitably to the collapse of the Afghan military forces and eventually the Afghan government.
Well, the military chiefs actually disagreed with a question about whether the pullout had impacted the reputation of the United States abroad. The chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Miley, saying the credibility of the US with its allies and partners globally is being reviewed. One of the questions to him was about whether any damage had been done, and he said damage may be one word to use to describe the effect on the US reputation. Caroline Malone, CGTN, Washington.
Well, for more insights on the U.S. hearing, earlier we spoke to Jack Midgley, a former Army civilian advisor to the commander of International Security Assistance Forces. He said that the idea of keeping 2,500 troops in Afghanistan is part of the blame shifting that took place in the hearing.
The idea that the future of Afghanistan rested on 2,500 U.S. soldiers and a few contractors is based on a ridiculous assumption. And it's an example of the kind of blame shifting that I'm talking about. The military leadership today talked out of both sides of its mouth. On the one hand, saying they did not want to disclose their advice to the president, and on the other hand, blaming him directly for giving the order to complete the withdrawal. You can't have it both ways. No one could seriously believe that maintaining 2,500 American soldiers in Afghanistan would have preserved that government. One of the few things that I heard today that I found that I had to agree with was the secretary, when he said that our policy built a state but could not forge a nation. The challenge, of course, was that there was never a nation to forge. Afghanistan was a country before the Americans got there. What we did in over 20 years was destroy it and fail to replace the government that we removed with a functioning organization. The real questions are why those objectives were set, why we persisted so long when the military and civilian leadership all knew that we were on a failed course. Those are hard questions that our government is going to have to take a serious step back and answer. We don't have a good answer today for why the United States persisted for so long, but some minor difference in advice over 2,500 troops, fewer people than we would send to fight a forest fire or respond to a domestic incident. The idea that that could somehow have saved Afghanistan, I think, is just ridiculous on its face.
Greece has signed a deal with France to buy 3 naval ships worth more than $3 billion. French President Emmanuel Macron said it was part of a deeper partnership to defend shared interests in the Mediterranean. He said Europe was being naive by failing to defend its interests and beef up its own military after Australia broke a multi-billion-dollar deal with France to instead buy American submarines.
We would be naive, or rather we would be making a terrible mistake if we did not want to draw consequences from that. We have to see this with pragmatism and lucidity for our independence, and we must, as Europeans, take responsibility for our own protection.
Meanwhile, Paris says it'll sharply reduce the number of visas granted to citizens of Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. France has accused the 3 African countries of not doing enough to allow illegal immigrants to return to their home countries. President Emmanuel Macron reportedly took the decision a month ago after failed diplomatic talks. France will now halve the number of visas issued to Algerian and Moroccan nationals while slashing those issued to Tunisians by 30%. Morocco says France's visa clampdown is unjustified. The 76th session of the UN General Assembly ended on Monday in New York with a call for wealthy nations to do more to help developing countries struggling under the weight of the coronavirus pandemic. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more on the highlights of the General Assembly gathering.
While presenting a new policy on jobs and poverty eradication at a virtual high-level meeting with world leaders and international organizations, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for more assistance for developing countries. The UN chief told participants that uneven recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic was eroding trust between the developed and developing world.
Developed countries' access to vaccines has allowed economies to reopen, while stimulus payments and investments herald projected growth of 5 or 6% this year. In sub-Saharan Africa, that figure is just about 2.5%.
Speakers at the event warned that the prevailing situation could lead to global instability if not corrected.
The exact opposite of leaving no one behind, the contrary of building back better, an abandonment of the commitments of the 2030 Agenda, a world of heightened inequality, poverty, instability, and conflict.
We're confronting a looming era of reversals of the development achievements of the last decades.
At another event, the Director General of the World Health Organization promised to take action after receiving a report by an independent commission on allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse by WHO staff in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The abuse is alleged to have occurred between 2018 and 2020.
We must act immediately, and we will, in 3 areas. First, support, protection, and justice for the victims and survivors. Second, actions to address management and staff failures. And third, wholesale reform of our structures and culture.
On climate change, rich countries were urged to honor their climate pledges. The UN Secretary-General also welcomed a decision by Russia and the US to extend the New START Treaty on nuclear weapons and begin strategic dialogue. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, South Africa's deaf community is pushing for sign language to be added to the country's list of official languages. There are 4 million South Africans living with hearing impairments, but they still face many challenges in their homes and workplaces due to poor communication. CGTN's Julie Shire takes a look at a coffee shop that has made sign language cool.
I Love Coffee, a trendy spot in Cape Town, was started 5 years ago to create opportunities for young deaf people in the hospitality industry.
So when it comes to finding a job, it's very difficult to present yourself in a way that makes it appealing to employers. And on the other side, as employers, if we don't know sign language, it's difficult to employ a deaf person.
The start of a day is always better with a cup of coffee, and in any other coffee shop you would tell the barista what you want, but here it's entirely done by sign language.
People love to learn it. So when they walk into the store and they see the TV and they learn to sign cappuccino, they love it. They love that interaction. We run sign language classes on a Saturday morning and then come in and spend time with our staff. The first time you'll learn cappuccino, and then you'll learn sugar and milk, and you'll slowly learn it.
4 million people in South Africa are deaf. Despite efforts made to get them into the job market, there are still many challenges. The country's Deaf Association is spearheading a call to add it as a 12th official language.
We need to get everyone in all spheres of government to really understand the importance of sign language, and that's why we're having this day, to celebrate this day and also to raise an awareness why our language is so important.
It will open the doors to education, full education by the deaf, for the deaf. It'll open up the job market, employment. A lot of the social issues that we deal with, which we deal with as a business, will actually start disappearing, and that's what we really hope for the deaf community.
There are 200 different sign languages in the world. The South African version is not properly developed and is used among deaf people. Making it official would get a lot more South Africans understanding each other. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
In Nigeria, psychologists are urging the government to increase efforts to address the welfare and mental health needs of internally displaced people in the country. Victims of crises living in IDP camps in the country are reporting depression as a result of uncertainty about their future. They also face other problems, including extreme hunger. Tesem Akende brings us that report.
3 of Friday Koi's brothers were killed by gunmen last month. He is living at this makeshift home in Jos after his house and food barns were destroyed.
Many times I get engrossed in different thoughts about my brothers who were killed, thoughts of food for my children and the uncertainty of the future. I can't really explain. My farm was destroyed, same for our food barns. Here at this camp, food is usually sent to us, but whether or not we get satisfied at the meals is another thing altogether. Many times I get really depressed and fed up.
The Nigerian General Household Survey says chronic depression affects about 20% of Nigerian households. It adds that nearly 2 out of 5 Nigerian respondents have been affected by at least one negative event, such as conflict.
Crisis conditions, natural disasters, especially when someone has lost a lot and does not have a proper support system to help him cope with the situation. That can lead to very severe depressing episodes. The person begins to lose interest in things that naturally he used to love doing, even food.
The World Health Organization says depression has affected about 7 million people in Nigeria. Experts are calling on the government to attend to depressed people at temporary homes in the country, which they say is a leading cause of suicide.
A lot of people have lost their homes. There's a way that the government can help them rebuild their shelters. In some cases, government builds shelters and then allocates to them. And then in other places, their sources of livelihood can be replaced, or can be supported. Where people had lost jobs, more employment could be created to support them, or those who were doing some business could be assisted to fall back into business.
The government says it is focused on ending insecurity and reintegrating internally displaced persons into society. The government has adopted a national health policy for provision of mental health services for depressed people at camps for the internally displaced and other levels. President Muhammadu Buhari in June this year also launched a humanitarian project, including 10,000 housing units, power plants, and agricultural schemes that will help alleviate the suffering of internally displaced persons in the country. It's hoped these efforts will be enough to rehabilitate and reintegrate internally displaced persons like Friday Kai and relieve the symptoms of depression many suffer from. Tassim Akendi, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Right, well, it's time for us to take another short breather. Don't go anywhere. Here's what's coming up in the business. We take a look at what the African continent has to offer from its rich repertoire of heritage attractions.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start off the business in Somalia, where the completion of a 30-kilometer highway connecting the capital Mogadishu to the town of Afgui is being hailed as the greatest infrastructural achievement in 30 years. Here is CGTN's Wanja Mongai with that story.
This tarmac road connecting Somalia's capital of Mogadishu to Afgoye town is a major infrastructural milestone. It is considered the longest tarmac road project to be completed since the collapse of President Siad Barre's government in 1990.
What has brought about the delay in the construction of this road is the security. We wanted to ensure there's security first, since a lot of people, both locals and foreigners, worked here. A lot of people died during the construction of the road to Afgoye, especially construction workers. The Al-Shabaab militants were opposed to the construction of this road.
Militants are reported to have killed dozens of construction workers since July 2019, when the construction work began. Despite these attacks and other major stumbling blocks, the $200 million project funded by the Qatari Investment Authority eventually succeeded. It's now a great relief for the locals. It links the capital to the agricultural town of Afgoye, northwest of Mogadishu. Before its completion, delays, costly bus fares and insecurity were common challenges. Ali Hassan Omar, a fruit vendor in Mogadishu, is among the jubilant businessmen.
We used to get our vegetables late, but thank God now it arrives within 30 minutes. Initially, we had to wait 2 to 3 hours, or at least 1 hour 30 minutes. The pawpaw used to get spoiled on the way. We thank God that the problem has been solved.
I am very happy about the construction of this road. It is all good for use now. We thank the government. I used to spend 2 to 3 hours to travel to Afgoye. Today, I am very happy. That time has reduced to 20 or at most 30 minutes.
This success story is seen as a boost for a country that has suffered massive economic and infrastructural losses due to a prolonged civil war. Wanja Mongai, CGTN.
Well, staying in East Africa, Uganda announced this week that it's scrapping visa fees for South Sudanese travelers. The news has been greeted with jubilation by those who commute between the two countries. The decision will save travelers $100 for each round trip and is aimed at boosting cooperation and trade. CGTN's Patrick Oyet now reports.
Uganda's Minister of East African Affairs announced that South Sudanese will enter Uganda visa-free starting October 2021. Uganda has given South Sudan 30 days to reciprocate the same for Ugandans entering South Sudan. Visa fees for a South Sudanese entering Uganda is currently $50 each. The same amount is charged for each Ugandan entering into South Sudan. South Sudan's government has said it welcomes the visa fee waiver.
Since the Ugandans have done it, well, then definitely we'll do the same. Like going to Kenya now is free. You are not asked for visa, but your passport will only be stamped and you go. The same thing with going to Rwanda. If you are going to Rwanda now, you don't need any visa. You just be given free at the airport on entry. The same thing if they have accepted, so we will do it.
South Sudan is a host to many Ugandan traders and business people. South Sudan's government says the free movement of people in the East African region will promote people-to-people contact, trade and development. Patrick Koyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
And Uganda is revamping some of its World Heritage sites to boost local tourism revenues. Government figures show that tourism revenues dropped by 73% in the last 2 years because of the coronavirus pandemic. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga has more now from Kampala.
Restoring the Kasubi Royal Tombs. The World Heritage Site was partially destroyed by fire in March 2010, but it's now being restored to its former glory. Created and designed with natural materials, the tombs reflect the historical, tradition and spiritual values of the Baganda people.
The history of Uganda starts with Mutesa. So many people come here to learn about the history of Uganda and those who participated in nation building.
The heritage site was formerly a palace for the king of Buganda, but it was later converted into a royal burial ground. This is one of the key cultural symbols for the Baganda people. 4 kings were buried in here, and the locals occasionally come here to perform rituals in respect for the fallen kings. Before the fire, the site attracted more than 30,000 visitors annually. Authorities say the tombs will be open to the public in 5 months.
When you go in the site there, it's quite amazing, and that is why it is a must visit for anybody. If you come to Uganda and you have not visited the Kasubi tombs, I pity those who have been coming when we have been reconstructing it. You cannot say that you have visited Uganda.
Some of the traditional artifacts like drums, spears and backcloth are displayed here. As a cultural norm, visitors are treated to the Kiganda traditional dance as they wind up their tour. Memories that could live with them for years. Hilary Ayesiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Meanwhile, one of Africa's southernmost World Heritage sites is the Cape Floristic region, which is a biodiversity hotspot in South Africa. It includes a number of protected areas in the country, such as the Table Mountain National Park, the Cape of Good Hope, and the internationally acclaimed Kirstenbosch National Botanical Garden, which are all biodiverse national parks and tourist attractions. Renee Delcarme has more.
The Cape Floristic region has around 9,000 plant species in South Africa's western and eastern Cape provinces and is home to nearly 20% of Africa's flora. The Cape Floristic region covers over 500,000 hectares of land that are rich in indigenous and endemic plant species, which are found nowhere else in the world. This floral kingdom was declared a World Heritage Site back in 2004 because of its natural beauty and ecological importance. The Kirstenbosch National Botanical Garden says it is privileged to be displaying and showcasing a vast collection of plants from across the Cape Floristic region.
What is amazing about Kirstenbosch is that it allows us an opportunity in really rediscovering our natural heritage and giving that to the world. We cultivate about plus minus 7,000 different species. We've got lots of birds, about 136 species of birds that are very famous for Kirstenbosch.
The iconic garden attracted around 1 million visitors a year before COVID-19. And although visitor numbers have dropped significantly, Kirstenbosch is looking as exquisite as ever.
What we're seeing here, for example, are the annual spring displays. And these are plants that have been brought in and introduced to the gardens over many years from the Cape West Coast, as well as in the Namaqualand in the arid, semi-arid parts of South Africa. And that's primarily to provide seasonal splashes of color in the garden.
It's just a very harmonious, peaceful, beautiful spot. And then you add on the botanical wonders, and it's for a botanical horticultural person, there really is no better place.
A large part of the upper reaches of Kirstenbosch is devoted to Cape fynbos, including a wide variety of proteas, such as these pincushions, and South Africa's national flower, the king protea.
I have to come here I have to just drink in everything that it has to offer. These beautiful views, these beautiful trees that have been here for such a long time, the birds in the trees, the flowers, the gardens. And this beautiful view, this is what I come to Kirstenbosch for.
It's so beautiful. The flowers and the birds, it's a compliment.
It really just is nature at its best, and the floral diversity is second to none in the world. We're just in Cape Town so lucky to have this space, this green space that we can come, and that's ours.
And it's hoped that this precious natural heritage will be conserved and protected for generations to come. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Now, the continent of Africa is known for its cultural diversity, vibrant music and elaborate fashion. It also has a rich array of tasty delicacies. However, African food has not received as much global recognition as its music and fashion. A group of culinary enthusiasts hopes to change that. They're working to bring a wide variety of foods enjoyed across the continent into the international limelight. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam now reports.
It's the African Food and Drinks Festival in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. And thousands of food lovers from across the world are here to savor the tastes of some African meals. The festival features over 50 vendors from across Africa, including those from Senegal, Ethiopia, Ghana and Nigeria. There's a wide variety of cuisine on offer here.
We brought masa here today. It's a Nigerian delicacy from the north. It's one of the most important delicacies of the north. It's paired with mian taushe.
Chabujan is very nutritious because it contains lots of vegetables. Most people have not seen them before, so they are really interested in it.
I have starch. Starch is made from cassava. I have baga soup. It's made up from palm fruits. And I have owo soup.
West Africa, everybody knows about kuli kuli. Yes, so we're trying to make it an international snack. Kuli kuli is mainly made out of peanuts.
Lots of food connoisseurs and lovers are eager to treat their taste buds to a variety of dishes.
If you ask me how they prepare this, I don't know, but I just love eating it.
African food is it, really. And our food is healthy. And spicy. African food is something you should try.
Beyond the unique taste of African cuisines, they're a unifying force across the continent and speak volumes of its diversity of rich cultures. African music and fashion have gained massive traction across the globe, but the food hasn't received as much exposure, and this is what organizers here are looking to change.
The aim of the event is to celebrate Africa. And one of the best ways to celebrate Africa is through its culture and food. From the ancient times, our food has been medicinal. The black culture, the black communities around the world, this is what our ancestors have been eating. This is what have made them to live longer than a lot of people.
Traditional African diets are largely made using locally grown plants, including tubers, seeds, grains and roots. And they can be flexibly prepared to meet the much desired individual dietary needs. Food enthusiasts here believe that African cuisines can generate much-needed export revenues while satisfying the appetites of many across the world. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, let's take you to some news just reaching us now from Tunisia. President Kais Saied has reportedly appointed a new prime minister. Najla Boudin Ramdan is the new man tasked with leading the government's agenda. His appointment is likely to be interpreted as an attempt by President Kais Saied to loosen his grip on power, which has led to mounting criticism in the country after he suspended the country's parliament. We will, of course, continue to keep tabs on that story and keep an eye on that story as it develops. Well, coming up on Africa Live. We'll tell you about a choir in Egypt that's soaring beyond social and gender barriers.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Let's turn to Egypt now, where a trailblazing choral group is challenging male domination of a traditional musical discipline. The members of Al-Hur, Egypt's first all-women Muslim recitation choir, are determined to change deep-rooted taboos. Yasser Hakim has more.
For centuries, Islamic choirs and recitation groups have been monopolized by men in Egypt. That was until these young girls seen here rehearsing for their next concert shocked the industry by becoming the first all-female Islamic choir. They're called Al-Hur, or Women from Heaven.
The idea came up in 2017 and I launched the group. Members are chosen based on talent, a good voice, a musical ear, and must have passion and enthusiasm for this kind of music. As a girls' band, we wanted to perform to prove to us women and the world that we can compete with men and be even better, and that Islamic recitals are not solely for men.
To her surprise, many girls applied to join, though they are from strict families that don't accept females singing publicly.
It was something strange to everyone around me that a girl will go to sing the lyrics of famous religious songs. But I wanted to take up this challenge because I felt my voice is good enough. So I went ahead despite the rejections, and I'm happy now.
Sometimes, of course, we are criticized on how we as females sing in public, and it's better for us to do something else or change our careers. But I'm sure what we're doing is right, to sing praise for the Prophet. So we take criticism lightly.
They've also added their own flavor to the songs.
Al-Hur performs religious songs, but we try to tweak it to be more up-to-date and modern. We change the style and rhythm to attract a younger audience and be more popular.
Pursuing their passion in this conservative society was not easy, given that it's only men who were allowed to recite publicly.
We faced challenges, obstacles and crises. Thank God we have overcome them with time. We were not accepted. There was no backing, either socially or financially, from any state or private institution. But we worked hard on ourselves to improve and be included in shows so that we don't close down.
Al-Hur became a success with popular songs praising God and Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him.
It's a beautiful idea, and their religious songs are very nice. I hope there can be more of this in Egypt. They look nice and are unique. I hope they succeed further.
2020 was a bad year for them. The founder had to lay off half the group after public gatherings and concerts were suspended due to the coronavirus pandemic. But they still dream of better days ahead.
I wish that we together we can travel and perform abroad, get to know other cultures and groups. Just like foreign groups come here, we also want to travel and perform in front of foreign audiences. I wish Al Hur will shoot to the sky.
At least now that activities have resumed, the young girls who broke barriers in Egypt hope they can achieve their new ambition of becoming a global force in religious singing. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Right, well, let's jump straight into sport here on Africa Live. We start off in Cameroon, where football legend Samuel Eto'o won his post as departmental delegate in Douala, moving closer in his quest to become president of the country's football federation. Eto'o booked his ticket with the departmental vote in the Littoral region on Monday after presenting his project to voters. The four-time African Player of the Year won the vote by a landslide, clearing his path to run for the top post. Eto'o is running on the promise of rebuilding Cameroonian football as the country prepares to host next year's Africa Cup of Nations. The former Inter Milan, Barcelona and Chelsea forward still faces a long road to the presidency of FECAFOOT, whose election is scheduled for December the 11th. Stakeholders shared their views on his run for the presidency as he laid out his plans for the footballing body.
Do not forget the promise we made to ourselves, to be an example for football. Football must once again become a team sport, a sport where we must work and put ourselves at the service of the Cameroonian people. This is the mission we have set for ourselves. From today, we will start working to meet this challenge. I hope that in a few months, we will make our country proud to have had citizens who came together to change an unfortunate history.
I think that Samuel Eto'o's candidacy is welcome for Cameroonian football, because to lead a football federation today, you need someone who has a lot of confidence in himself and who also has everyone's confidence. Eto'o has an extensive address book, and we believe that if he is elected president, he'll be able to improve the image of Cameroonian football.
Eto'o has a worldwide reputation, and he can ask anyone internationally to help Cameroonian football. He also has the financial capacity to help the federation. He can convince partners to finance the clubs and all the actors of football who have been suffering for several years now. We all know that the championship is facing enormous difficulties. Today, I think all stakeholders in Cameroonian football believe that Eto'o is capable of bringing what is missing in our football.
Let's turn to the UEFA Champions League and a big showdown in Group A that saw